goes over the bridge, he grabs Mei and jumps away to safety. And as for Gold's brother, after what just happened, the only thought going through his mind is, you know what, maybe being a criminal isn't worth it after all. The next day, Kinosaki tells Gero to meet him at an art gallery, and he doesn't understand why at first, but Kinosaki explains that even if he were to get a date with a girl, he'd mess it up in no time, so this is a practice date so that he can work on his mannerisms. As the day goes on, Gero and Kinosaki go around the gallery together, and Kinosaki is acting natural, but Gero is really stiff with his responses, so Kinosaki tells him to just loosen up a little because this isn't an interview. However, Gero doesn't know how to loosen up, so he runs off and starts searching through the internet for pickup lines, but Kinosaki tells him he should just speak normally, which is a lot easier said than done for him. While they continue walking through the gallery, Gero eventually notices a DIY candy kit on display, and this isn't just any candy kit either, this is the first one that was ever made 40 years ago. Gero is really into candy kits, and even though this one is a collector's item that could easily cost 30 million, he'd be willing to pay 5 times that to get his hands on it. Kinosaki can't believe a candy kit could be so expensive, but seeing Gero get excited about something is a nice change from his usual awkward self. And now that he has had a chance to break the tension by talking about something familiar to him, he's a lot more laid back and can actually make jokes about the art instead of awkwardly spouting pickup lines, so that's a step in the right direction. Gero is grateful that Kinosaki is giving him a date rehearsal, but he's still not sure how a guy like him is supposed to find his charm, but just as he says this, Kinosaki points his attention toward a guy sitting on the first floor of the gallery. At first glance, the dude looks like an absolute weirdo, crouched down by an exhibit and muttering to himself, but he actually has a loving wife and adoring fans who flock to him the second they realize who he is. That's because he is one of the most famous artists of this generation, and the same rule applies to other talents, because people are inclined to like those who are skilled at something they enjoy or need. It may seem shallow to say you like someone for what they can do, but that is also part of your charm, the same as your looks or your personality, so he needs to take advantage of everything he has. Gero understands what he's saying, but he doesn't think he has any talents that could be used as part of his charm. However, Kinosaki tells him that he does. After all, he was able to take out an entire room of bad guys all on his own with his poison master skills, and there's no way something as amazing as that won't be considered charming. Kinosaki asks him to lean in close and tells him all he needs to do is start helping people, but having someone whisper in his ear is a new experience, so Gero is startled and jumps back in shock. Kinosaki goes on to explain that if he does stuff like protect high-profile clients and rescue hostages, preferably with ladies around to witness it, before he knows it, at least one person is going to fall for him. And it shouldn't be too hard for him since he already accepts pretty much any job out there as long as it's not outright evil. Gero doesn't really think this is going to work because he's a poison master who assassinates people, but Kinosaki reminds him that there are no rules, stating that Gero can't save people too. Even so, Gero says it would feel like he was taking advantage of the girl if he acted like himself, just to get her to like him. But Kinosaki says it doesn't really matter how you meet someone, whether you bump into them naturally or stalk them for 3 months beforehand. As long as the two of you genuinely like each other, it will work out. Take Shiratori for example, he has a lot of young girls fawning over him because of his work, but he still chooses his wife above all else. So he grabs her hand and starts running out of the gallery to get away from the crowd. It's a touching display of how much they both care for each other. But Kinosaki was actually hoping to get an autograph from Shiratori as well, so he chases after him. Later that night at the cruise gallery, one of the paintings has been stolen, and this looks like the work of none other than the famous art thief, Himekawa. The guard is furious because the captain of the ship put a lot of effort into gathering these art pieces in many not-so-legal ways, and he won't stand for anyone stealing from the collection that he rightfully stole. They begin searching for any signs of a getaway boat nearby, but they haven't found anything on the radar, so they assume she must still be on the ship somewhere. However, Himekawa has already made her escape via a shark, and she's heading straight for land as they speak.
Albion Online.
Meanwhile, the captain is informed that one of his paintings has been stolen, but he doesn't seem too bothered by it because he thinks it's a small price to pay to finally get rid of an annoying pest. As Himekawa makes it to the shore, she's about to meet up with her team so they can all make their escape, but all of a sudden, the group gets engulfed by a vortex of water because the captain has already hired someone to take care of Himekawa. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Kinosaki reiterates the plan to get Gero a girlfriend by having him save people, and Gero understands most of it, but he has no idea how he's supposed to find rescue jobs when all he has ever done are assassinations. Kanasaki takes out his phone and shows him a website called DarkNav, and it's basically a dark web job site where all sorts of criminal and otherwise shady jobs are posted for anyone to accept. It should be really easy for Jiro to find a rescue job with this, and frankly, he's surprised that Jiro has never heard of it before since pretty much everyone in this line of work uses it nowadays. Jiro says all his jobs usually go through his family's broker, so he has never had to search like this before. Jiro takes a look at the job board, but he's not very impressed by what he sees since pretty much all the jobs there are either scam or smuggling related. But that's just because he's on Kinasaki's account right now, and deception is his area of expertise. After searching a little more, Jiro eventually comes across a post from the captain of the ship who has taken Himekawa hostage, and he is demanding that Himekawa's group hand over all the art they've stolen if they want to get her back unharmed. The criminal underworld knows Himekawa as a skilled art thief, but the truth is that she only targets malicious collectors who steal art from others, specifically so she can return it to its rightful owner. That's why Himekawa's crew is trying to hire someone to infiltrate the captain's base and rescue her, but unfortunately, it looks like Jiro and Kinasaki are the only ones who showed up. The group expected as much since they don't have enough money to offer a decent reward, and no rational assassin is going to accept such a risky job when the pay is so low. Fortunately for them, Jiro isn't in it for the money, so he agrees to take on the job. He introduces himself as a master of the Poison Clan, and as soon as the group hears that, they are terrified because they never expected to run into a poison master here. Normally, they'd have to sell all their organs just to cover the broker fee for someone as skilled as him, but if he's really willing to help them, then they aren't going to say no. However, before Jiro gets to work, he has a very important question, so he asks the group if Himekawa is single. Meanwhile, Himekawa is currently being held in the captain's private quarters, and the captain is talking about how beautiful he thinks she is. So he says he will spare her life if she agrees to become a part of his collection, but Himekawa flat out refuses. She came here to steal that painting back because the husband of the woman in the painting said it was the last thing he and his daughter had to remember his late wife by, so they were absolutely devastated when it was stolen. That's why Himekawa agreed to steal it back, and she refuses to give up until she has returned it to its rightful owners, but the captain has no intention of letting her do that. So he orders his mercenary to torture Himekawa until her resolve has been broken. Meanwhile, Jiro and Kinasaki are on their way to save Himekawa, and while they are running, Kinasaki tells Jiro that asking a question like that was really risky. It was fortunate that the guys just thought it was code for the mission, but if they knew he was just doing this to try and get Himekawa to fall for him, it would ruin the entire plan if she found out. Eventually, they arrive at the location where Himekawa's GPS says she should be, but the second Kinasaki gets to the top of the stairs, he gets 2 shotgun barrels pointed at him by the guards. Fortunately, before he can be shot, Jiro manages to take the guards out with a split kick, all while aura farming with his hands in his pockets. He then turns to ask Kinasaki if he's alright, and he says he's fine, but he's starting to think he should sit this one out because he's not much of a fighting type. However, Jiro says he needs Kinasaki to come with him because he has never met this girl before, and he's worried that he will screw it up if he's alone. Back in the captain's quarters, Himekawa has been getting waterboarded for the past 5 minutes, but the captain tells Ushio to stop for now because he just got word that there are 2 intruders nearby. So he wants Ushio to go deal with them, and while he's gone, the captain plans to try out some more creative torture methods on Himekawa. As Jiro and Kinasaki continue making their way to Himekawa, Kinasaki asks Jiro what he intends to say when he finally finds her, and while taking out a group of guards, Jiro responds with, "Hello, will you please marry me?" Kinasaki immediately tells him that's a terrible idea, because Himekawa is probably terrified right now, and the last thing she wants to hear is the guy who saved her proposing on the spot. Meanwhile, back on Himekawa's end, the captain points a gun at her head, and she thinks he's about to shoot her, but it's actually worse than that, because he points his gun at the painting and threatens to shoot it if Himekawa doesn't submit to him. Himekawa made a promise to return that painting in one piece, and she can't do that if the captain destroys it, so she's about to relent and agree to do whatever the captain wants. But just then, his arm is blown clean off, and he then sees a burning figure come out of the painting and engulf his entire body in flames, but that part is just a hallucination caused by a dose of Jiro's poison, and the captain is going to be out for quite a while. Jiro walks up to Himekawa and recites his practice line, introducing himself as the Poison Master and telling her that she's safe now because he came to rescue her.
My name is Goonbug. I can evolve.
He came to rescue her. Himekawa is relieved that someone came to save her, but she knows her group doesn't have the kind of money necessary to hire a poison master, so she's worried that her friends might have sold their organs to pay for it. Meanwhile, Jiro is freaking out because while he may have made a good introduction, He didn't think of what he was going to say afterward, so he doesn't know what to do now. Kinosaki walks up and starts untying Himekawa before Gero says anything to mess this up, but just then, Ushio grabs Himekawa and drags her away. Jiro can tell that Ushio is going to be a tough opponent for him to beat, so he injects himself and charges at her with a lethal dose of poison, but before he can make contact, Ushio gets away with a sudden blast of water. Jiro grabs Himekawa and tosses her over to Kinosaki so he can keep her safe in the meantime, while he goes to deal with Ushio. Ushio attempts to crush Jiro by filling her arm with water to maximize impact, and the strike creates a hole in the ground, but Jiro manages to block most of the damage. Ushio then charges at Jiro again, but instead of attacking, she hands him a business card and introduces herself as a water master. She has just realized that Jiro is a poison master, and she would rather not fight another master because the losses incurred in trying to beat him would be too great. So she asks if he would be willing to walk away if she offers to pay 10 times what Himekawa's crew paid. Meanwhile, on the upper floor, Kinosaki notices the syringe the hero used still has some liquid in it, and he is considering using it on himself so he can help Jiro fight. But Jiro yells at him not to touch it because it's not an enhancement drug, it's deadly poison. Each assassin family has a genetic trait that they pass down from generation to generation, and in Jiro's family, it's the ability to greatly increase their physical attributes when they have deadly poison flowing through their veins. Genetic traits like that are also the reason Ushio is able to control water so freely in combat. Regarding the deal she offered a moment ago, Jiro turns her down, and she is disappointed to hear that because she knows fighting him is going to be expensive, but she has no choice. She launches a water blast at him, but Jiro manages to dodge because his abilities grow stronger the closer he is to death, though taking one of those blasts head-on would be a death sentence. So he needs to avoid getting hit. Ushio doesn't understand why Gero is putting so much effort into this mission when he has nothing to gain from it, and she starts to wonder if Gero and Himekawa might be romantically involved in some way, but Jiro doesn't respond. He manages to use a needle to scratch Ushio's suit, and at first she isn't too concerned about it, but then the scratch bursts into flames because the needle was laced with a highly potent acid. Jiro then takes advantage of the opportunity to strike Ushio multiple times in the faceplate until it cracks, and as he does this, he explains that while Himekawa may be a stranger to him right now, she might become someone special to him in the future, so he's going to do everything he can to save her. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.